Anya Cordell is engaged in a lot of different speaking engagements. She's written a wonderful book, and today she's here, I believe, to speak a bit about appearancism, and especially how that is connected with empathy. So, Anya, please come to the stage.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really thrilled to be here. I know it's a little chilly in here, but I know that I'm among very, very, very warm hearts, and I definitely feel that. And I'm so grateful to Debbie and the organizers. So this is one of my websites. Doesn't have lots of bells and whistles, but it might be informative and interesting for you, appearancism.com. And I also have on the screen the name of an article that I wrote, Where the Anti-Muslim Path Leads, which you can find on the website, islamophobiatoday.com. And I know that this is a maybe largely Muslim audience. I don't know that everybody here is Muslim, but so some of us here don't need a lot of reminders about what is going on in this climate and how it's impacting so many innocent people in negative ways. But in the larger population, I think there are a lot of people who don't really know that piece of the story. And I encourage people to look at websites such as islamophobiatoday.com or to get the CARE e-newsletter and to keep up with understanding what it is that's going on. And you can just search for my name for that article, Cordell, in that article. And I have a few reprints with me if you know that you're not going to be able to find it that way. And it is a piece that I'm extremely proud of and has gotten a lot of play on the internet and acclaim. And I think it crystallizes a lot of the essence of my work. I want to highlight a few of the slides that I use in programs that I do. I do programs for audiences ranging from 5th grade through senior citizens. So I have a couple of them that I want to show you, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about my path and my journey and story, how I came to do this work. The slide that you're looking at is a slide that I actually took off the Islamophobia Today website. It happens to be a picture of the Utoya summer camp, youth camp in Norway the day before the massacre. And you are looking at pictures of some of the children who died in the massacre. And what is extraordinarily interesting about this slide, I don't know if you can read the caption underneath. The caption says, "Note the faces which are more Middle Eastern or mixed than pure Norwegian." Now, what an odd caption that is. The person who captioned the photo was somebody who hates Muslims, who is making her career out of disseminating virulent anti-Muslim messaging. And so, after the massacre, she was putting forth the proposition that the camp was negative to begin with, and it was a sort of a blame the victim kind of an approach. And she was saying that the people who weren't, that most of the people in the camp were Muslim, or they were mixed. They weren't pure Norwegian. Now, I've looked at this picture very closely, and there are many, many, many blondes in this picture. There's obviously the young Sikh gentleman in the far right, and there's a few darker-skinned children that I can pick out. Somebody else went even further and basically said the karma of these children was that they were likely going to become terrorists, and they were mingling with multiculturalists. That would be people like me or people like you, Joyce, or, obviously many of us in the room, anybody who advocates coexistence and work together the way we are trying to do. So this kind of blame the victim mentality is so troubling. And I use this picture also to convey that what's going on is not just a Muslim problem, it's a human problem. That the people who died on 9/11, the people who died in Norway, were an incredible range of people. So whether the perpetrators were Muslim on 9/11 or this white supremacist in Norway, people get caught up in it. All kinds of people get caught up in it. We know how this happens. And the xenophobia of the moment, the Islamophobia bleeds into, and it has impacted people not Muslim, not Arab. It has impacted Sikhs and Hindus and South Asians and others, and those of us who are labeled multiculturalist. So I'm very consumed with this issue of who is the other, who gets labeled the other. This young man, Reis Bhuyan, was one of the victims of post-9/11 hatred and violence. The man who murdered two innocent people, murdered an innocent Muslim man on September 15th of 2001, and an innocent Hindu American citizen from India originally. In between those two murders, he shot and wounded Reis and did not succeed in killing him. Reis is an amazing man. I'm proud that he's my good friend now. And he survived this shooting. He was blinded in one eye, and he did the most remarkable thing. He's Muslim. He was born in Bangladesh. He says that his faith taught him how to respond to this event in his own life. And he worked arduously. You can go to his website, worldwithout.hate.org. He worked arduously. He has a full-time job. And beside that, he created another second full-time job for himself to prevent the execution of the man who tried to murder him. He wasn't successful. It made international news all over the world. It was covered everywhere. And so isn't it incredibly ironic that the Muslim male who is so maligned and caricatured in our society, here is this angelic, humble hero, Reis, who is the living, breathing Muslim male. So I know that I don't need to describe the problem at length, but here's an amazing image. Safest restaurant on earth, no Muslims inside. Bumper stickers that say, it's time to play cowboys and Muslims. I could give you many examples of all of this, and I'm sure you know many examples as well yourselves. At a high school program that I did afterwards, a young man came up to me and sort of just quietly off to the side whispered to me, "Thank you so much for your program. I'm Muslim, but nobody here knows it." And it sent chills down my spine. Because if we are now in the moment, which I know that we are in, where it is not safe to be who you are and walk the halls of your school. There was a time in this country when if you could pass, if you were black and you could pass because it was safer for you or your children to pass as not black, when Anne Frank was hiding in an attic because it wasn't safe, obviously, for her and her family to be on the streets. These are very chilling things that we're experiencing. This cartoon is on the editorial page of the Columbus Dispatch, a major newspaper in our country in 2007, and it is a portrayal of the country of Iran depicted as a sewer grate with cockroaches streaming out of it. And this is a Nazi caricature of the Jews as vermin. This is classic propaganda imagery that we have seen historically over and over again, that when you start portraying one group as the other, the subhuman, the dirty, the vermin, the dangerous, the diseased. So let me go quickly. This is a caricature, a Nazi caricature of the ugly Jew. This is who the victim was, Anne Frank. I did receive the Spirit of Anne Frank Award for my work. I'm really proud and honored, and I also feel that it is a great responsibility because the people who protected Anne Frank's family in hiding for the 2 years that she survived long enough to write her diary were not Jewish people. They were non-Jewish allies, and they were a tremendous inspiration to me growing up as a Jewish girl reading Anne Frank's diary and asking myself, would I have the courage to do what they did? They didn't have to do it, and it put them at the same risk. This happens to be a picture of me as an adolescent. I grew up in a family that was really consumed with issues of appearance and beauty, and I tried desperately to fit in and be as fashionable and beautiful as I could be. And so over years, I finally began to realize that I was using up a tremendous amount of my personal resource and energy on this, and that I didn't want to be judged on that basis. I didn't want to judge everybody else in the world on this basis, and that it was unjust and unfair. I began to explore what I call appearancism, judging people based on appearance and how it operates. And basically, many cultures, this is a Chinese-bound foot shoe. I actually have the original in my bag. I forgot to pull it out. I can pull it out while we're talking later. So different cultures have done different bizarre things. We do many things in our culture. This is a little 3-inch shoe that was the ideal foot size for an adult Chinese woman. It was a fashion that lasted for 1,000 years. Not only do we fall into fashion, we're taught an indoctrinated fashion, we're taught an indoctrinated fashionable attitudes. And I'm very concerned with the issue of, is it safe to walk the world as is? It wasn't safe, a little Chinese girl couldn't have her natural feet because it wasn't the cultural norm. There are all kinds of cultural norms that we find ourselves subscribing to. And the question of, is it safe, was it safe to walk the world as a Jewish person? Obviously it wasn't during the Holocaust. Is it safe? Is it a crime? Is it a capital offense to be Jewish? Is it a capital offense to be Muslim? Well, this was my neighbor, Ricky Birdsong. He was murdered in 1999 by a white supremacist as far away from my front door at this podium as that back wall, closer than that. I live in a lovely affluent suburb where you don't expect drive-by shootings, and this young man who was under the influence of a white supremacist was out shooting at blacks and Jews and Asians, and he killed my neighbor, and he killed a Korean graduate student that summer. So one of the responses that I was furious, and I was appalled that this neighbor of mine was walking home with 2 of his 3 children and was murdered in cold blood, solely on the basis of appearance. One of the things that I did in the community was organize nightly walks, 7 days a week at 8 o'clock at night. We met at the intersection of where this murder occurred, and we walked for 4 months until the weather just got too cold to do. And that was a tremendously interesting initiative because it brought people together night after night after night. You know, these one-time walks, like one-time interfaith walks, are fine, but they don't do that. We have to create relationships. We have to forge the connections between people, which are very hard to forge.